Hello again. I'm Dr. Wendy, aka Dr. Every Woman, and we're taking off the white coat. White coat is still off, and now I'm ready to fight because I want to talk about why y'all keep calling these IUDs outside their name. Talking about, I heard horror stories. These IUDs are not out here stealing your best friend's bike, okay? They are working hard for the cause. I'm messing around. I'm Dr. Wendy, aka Dr. Every Woman, and I do want to talk about IUDs. And I am a card-carrying member, so I do feel strongly about it, but I do understand that people have various experiences, and I want to just talk about that, okay? Let's talk about IUDs and how they can positively or negatively impact you. Like, when does it go wrong, but when is it actually really good? So first and foremost, there are two different categories of IUDs. IUD stands for Intrauterine Device. So there are hormonal IUDs and then there are non-hormonal IUDs. Hormonal IUDs are the progestin-containing IUDs. So examples are Mirena, Liletta, Kyleena, and Skyla, okay? The copper IUD, which is the Paragard, is the IUD that's non-hormonal. So I think of the non-hormonal IUDs as great contraceptive options for people who cannot use any hormone, estrogen or progestin, no hormone at all, but you want to have birth control that's effective, 99% effective, better than a condom, but you don't want any hormone. So it's a great option for that. But the downside to the non-hormonal IUD is that it's not going to make your periods better, and it might make them a little worse. So if you're already starting off with a heavy period, that's not the IUD for you. I put the non-hormonal IUDs in people who don't want hormones, but also who already have reasonably shorter, lighter, not super crampy periods. Because if they already have heavy or crampy periods, it's just going to be trash. They don't want that. The progestin IUDs, I told you, Mirena, Liletta, Kyleena, Skyla are the options there. They are progestin only. So when you think of a birth control pill that has estrogen and progestin in it, IUDs only have progestin, and they have a fraction of what's in the pill, So it's a really, really low dose of a progestin, but it is progestin nonetheless. Those IUDs are really good for people who still don't want a whole lot of hormone that's like in a birth control pill, but they do want to see shorter, lighter periods. Understand this, that one of the indications for progestin IUDs is not just contraception, not just birth control. It is cycle control. It is reducing the heavy and painful periods. And I am a card-carrying member, the president, and the fan club, okay? Because my periods were trash before my IUD. I'm on my second IUD, my second 8-year IUD. We'll talk about duration in a second. But I'm on my second one, so I am about 10 years in my IUD journey, and I love it because I don't have my painful or heavy periods. People ask me why I'm so productive, and I want to be like, well, I know I'm productive because God is good, and I know He is in charge of everything. But I'm especially productive because I don't have periods. I don't have periods. Anyway, that's not another. I'll talk to y'all about that more in a second. So back to the progestin IUDs. There are 4 different types. 2 are pretty similar. Mirena and Liletta, they come from different companies, but they have the same duration, same indication, same size, same hormone dosage, all the same stuff. They're both 52 milligram progestins, which is still a fraction of what's in the pill, but they work really well to make periods shorter and lighter. Kyleena is a 5-year IUD. That's a 19 milligram progestin. Periods often will get shorter and lighter, but they may not get quite as short and light as with the Mirena or Liletta. Mirena and Liletta, again, 52 milligrams, Kyleena 19 milligrams. Some people with Mirena and Liletta don't have periods, like me, but a fair amount of people still do. Like, I think it's like 70% of people still have periods and like 30% don't. Less people with Kyleena are going to stop having periods. So said differently, more people will continue to have periods with Kyleena, but their periods will still be shorter and lighter than they were before they had any IUD. And then Skyla is a 3-year IUD. That one is a 14 milligram progestin. So we went from 52 milligrams to 19 milligrams, now to 14 milligrams. And that IUD can be used for up to 3 years. That's a good IUD for people who want space in between their kids. Yes, you can have IUDs in between your kids. Yes, you can have IUDs before you've had children, okay? Back in the day, we used to say, oh, we should get an IUD before you had kids. And now we've actually determined that it does not prevent pregnancy. It does not reduce your fertility to have an IUD before you've been pregnant, but it is a very reliable form of birth control. 99% effective. There is really no other birth control option apart from like getting your tubes tied that is more effective than an IUD. When do they go wrong? When do IUDs go wrong? Why do we talk about horror stories? Well, there's a few reasons. One, placement is crappy. I ain't going to lie to you. Placement is crappy. I actually had my last one placed and I recorded it. I might even put the clip here. You will see when I had my IUD placed and I actually forgot to take ibuprofen. Now, it was crappy, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't worse than my periods used to be. Let me tell you something. When you've had bad periods, The cramps of an IUD are not as bad, in my humble opinion, and in my experience with my patients. My patients who don't really have crampy periods, when I place their IUDs, are like, what on earth were you doing? But when you've had crampy periods, an IUD is usually less than a bad period. So placement is crampy, so you hear a lot of stories about that. I also now do a lot more pain control than I used to. So we typically will give people injected ketorolac, which is a really strong like ibuprofen type of medication that helps a lot. And I also give people misoprostol, which is a medication to help to soften the cervix the night before placement. So that helps to make the placement a little bit easier. Occasionally, if a person has had a history of trauma, either with or without IUD placement, or trauma in general. Like I've had people who've had like sexual trauma or even medical trauma, and I have actually placed those IUDs under sedation. It's not as easy to get that covered with insurance, but if I can like demonstrate or document some history of trauma or PTSD, I have had success having those IUDs placed under anesthesia, or even IUDs removed under anesthesia, especially if I've had challenging placement or removal in the past, or again, trauma or a lot of pain. I can typically justify it. Obviously, people have to, potentially come out of pocket if there's insurance, co-insurance, co-pays. But I think sometimes, if we have the option, if we're given the option to give people more pain control, especially if they, if they need that, so be it. But remember, everybody's body is different. I've placed IUDs with people who didn't take anything for pain, who are like, oh, you did it already? And they barely felt a thing. And then I've had other people who've had to have warm compresses, and stay in the office for another hour. Or some people I had even had to remove their IUD right as I placed it because it was just so bad. The pain was so bad. So the spectrum is so wide with what people experience, but from everybody that I can get the medication for, I try to treat reasonably well with just some level of comfort to reduce the cramping as the placement with IUD. The other thing that people often will talk about when it comes to IUD horror stories is an IUD gets stuck. An IUD can migrate. So an IUD is possible for it to migrate through the uterus and into the abdomen, but that happens less than 1% of the time. And typically we leave the string with the IUD strings hanging out of the cervix. So you're supposed to check your strings once a month. You check and make sure that the IUD is there by feeling into the vagina and feeling for those strings. They feel like fishing line. Not enough to bother you or partner or anything like that, but they are enough to be able to just know that they're there. If your strings are not there, then you need to know where is the IUD. Occasionally I'll have a patient whose strings have kind of slinked up into their cervix. And so then I can't feel them. I can't see them. They can't feel them or see them. I'll have that person have an ultrasound every couple of years just to make sure the IUD is still in the right place, which 9 times out of 10 it is, because I told you less than 1% of the time it migrates. But it does happen. So that's your fail-safe, though, to make sure that it doesn't move, is to make sure that the strings are where they should be or that the IUD is where it should be. And if it's not, then it can be removed before it goes anywhere. Like if it's trying to dislodge or look lopsided, I'll take that IUD out before it goes and runs them up. And then the other thing is sometimes it's hard to remove if the strings are not visible. So if the strings aren't visible and I can't just carefully reach into the cervix to grab the strings and get the IUD out, I'll remove that IUD under anesthesia as well. I'll take them and put them to sleep with the anesthesiologist, put them under sedation, and I'll take a scope, my little hysteroscope, my camera, and go into the uterus, look for the IUD, grab it, remove it. Remember, when you hear horror stories about anything medical, it's typically the outlier. It's not, you don't hear people talk about the thing that worked really well for them. Like, I don't make videos about how much I love my IUD. I love my IUD, but I don't make videos about how much I love it. Or I don't go into the reviews, chat rooms talking about how much I love my IUD. But people who've had bad experiences are going to go on the chat rooms, or they're going to make a video about how bad it was. And also, badness always goes viral on the interwebs anyway. So whenever somebody has a bad experience or something terrible and terribly wrong, that's what you're going to see. That's what you're going to read about. So just know that that doesn't necessarily represent the whole. I have a plethora, thousands of patients I've placed IUDs, and 99 times out of 100, they love their IUD. Most of the time, they love their IUD. So it's not going to be, one size fits all approach, but it is a situation where I don't want you to think that IUDs are bad. If anything, they can really help people, and they can be used instead of some of those major interventions I told you about, especially for heavy or abnormal bleeding. So that's all I'll talk about with that. I'll talk about other things soon, but thank you for rocking with me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or tell a friend. And as always, this is your friendly local gynecologist.